All right, we just had a bunch of folks join, so I'm gonna go ahead and start us off. We're at about 25 participants, 28 with all of us on the phone, maybe give or take. So welcome back to the Leadership Institute. Today we got a really special presentation and a really good friend of mine doing the leading of this presentation. So it's my pleasure and honor to always introduce Matt Kallmeyer. Some of you may know him from the region 6 times. Matt spent a lot of time in New Orleans, even back to his undergraduate degree at Tulane, where he played football for Tulane. They're pretty good now. They were pretty undefeated when he was there, but I don't think that was much to do with him. But nonetheless, Matt and I go way back. He's a really close friend and colleague. I like to say he's even a mentor to me. He started his career off in the post-Katrina days, or at least I'm going to go back to the post-Katrina days. He was a paramedic and actually became the early deputy director of the newly established Office of Homeland Security Emergency Preparedness here. Eventually became the director. We lost Matt to Atlanta. He moved away around 2010 timeframe and led Atlanta Fulton County Emergency Management for many years. And in that role for about a year and a half, he also led all public health emergency preparedness for the jurisdiction, kind of wearing a dual hat. And as we all know in public service, that never comes with dual pay. So it's kind of do a lot with nothing extra. So Matt's really been around the emergency management and public leadership, public service leadership, if you will, for many years. He's now with Invesco from their crisis and consequence management element there within the global Invesco unit. So he's got a litany of, I guess, stories to share with you all today and experiences trying to tie in some of the leadership styles that we're going to go over today. So without, complicating this and bantering already, because that's going to come up in the show. So please ignore Matt when he gets off tangent here. He and I are really good friends, so please ignore that. But nonetheless, it's always an honor. Matt, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you lead this session.
Thank you, Dr. Murphy. I appreciate it. And folks, today, if it does slip up and I don't give Steve credit for his academic prowess, it's just because of all the years. He's still Murphy to me. So I'll do my darndest to make sure that I give him the credit that's due. But with that being said, we'll go ahead and kick off. And I always like starting, and thank you for the great introduction, Murphy. You took about 10 slides out of my deck, so I appreciate that. So speeding that up. But if we could jump to the next one, I'd love starting off with a story. So one of the things that I love to do, and there we go. I was born and raised in Hawaii, and I absolutely love hiking. If anyone's ever had an opportunity to travel to Oahu, there's a place in Manoa called Manoa Falls, and it was not far from my house, so I could easily get there on my moped. I know that's going to put a chuckle on someone's face and look like a circus bear on my moped, but one of the things I used to love doing is going up there, and I would hike to the spot that you'll see in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And it was like a bamboo forest over there. And I used to sit there and just admire the bamboo. And besides the other beautiful things that you see on your screen, the bamboo was what really intrigued me. And I always thought it was so interesting watching it and how it progressed and things along those lines. If we could jump to the next slide. And as time went along, I just, you become more inquisitive and you try to look deeper into it and have to forward that for me as well. You'll notice that it doesn't grow quickly. One of the beautiful things about bamboo, and if you could forward the slide to get to the next things on the screen, is that you have to give it enough water, you have to give it enough soil, enough light, and a lot of other things for it to go ahead and start the process. You don't see remarkable growth in the first, second, third, or fourth year, but something amazing happens after that. And that's when you go and you start seeing that it will grow to 80 feet tall in just a 6-week period. So really what it's saying is that it's building an underground system. It's really what it's trying to do is to get the potential for growth so that it can create a strong foundation so then it can grow from there. If you could toggle through the slide. And we'll jump to the next one. And really, that's a life lesson for me. And that's something that I took away from that as a young person. And I always carried it throughout my whole career thus far. And I still talk about it as I go along with mentoring other kids that are coming into the profession. As I talk to my peers, I really think that bamboo gives us great leadership life lessons. So success does not come right away. That's number one thing that I took away from that. And we'll talk about that today a little bit as well. Success requires a strong foundation. I'll be insulting all of your intelligence. You're here today to go ahead and continue to add to your foundation. And that's one of the things that's so important. But the bamboo's height only is possible because of the root system that it grew and when it shot up after that. Success is about your consistency. You have to continue to go ahead and give things what it needs. You have to nurture. You have to do what you guys are doing, learning from others, talking to your peers, bouncing ideas off each other. That's one of the beautiful things about constantly watering yourself as a bamboo as well. And the final thing is patience and persistence. It will pay off. In each one of your careers, it will. It is definitely in mine. And I know there's another chapter waiting for me after where I am as well. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and jump into the next slide. And Murphy touched on this a little bit. I was born and raised in Hawaii. I'm fifth generation, so it's not just someone that they popped out over there and just stayed for a while. I am the black sheep of the family that never figured out how to come back west after traveling east, and I'm constantly reminded of that whenever I travel home. That's where I started my exposure to crisis and resource management, because you're on an island in the middle of the ocean and hurricanes come, and you better be ready to go ahead and take care of yourself for an extended period of time. And that's where I got my first exposure to that and fell in love with it. Murphy did share with you that I went to Tulane for my undergraduate degree. I was lucky enough to play Division I football there. And then I actually started getting more into the formal crisis management field. And the path was a non-traditional path, but it was one that I fell in love with because it allowed me to go ahead and get a great foundation as well. I started off in the public safety field as a paramedic, became a hazardous materials technician, did a lot of other things with rescue. As our EMS agency we were responsible for all aspects of confined space, high angle, the list goes on and on, swift water. So really got to have a great foundation in the public safety environment. And that allowed me to be successful for my next big jump into the emergency management field that Professor Murphy was talking about. Then we'll talk a little bit about the time I had there. Had great opportunities to go ahead and grow with people, and went to my graduate school at Tulane as well, in the School of Public Health. And from there, I transitioned from my job in New Orleans that Murphy spoke to you about, to running the office in Atlanta, Georgia, which is the Fulton County, Georgia, which is the largest jurisdiction in the state of Georgia. It's about 1.3 million people. With about a daily influx of about 500,000 people into the actual city proper and to the jurisdiction, because it's a big working location. And then from there, did that for 13 years. And it was just time for me to go ahead and try a new chapter. And that's where I moved into where I am right now with a company called Invesco, on the responsible for the North America footprint. And for that, responsible for 18 offices, as well as the global headquarters here in Atlanta, and making sure that our crisis management and cyber incident response team is prepared for anything that could be impacting our particular area. So one last thing, if I could, before we get into this, next slide, please. I want you guys to understand what drives me, what makes me who I am. So I love applying organization and structure to chaotic situations. That's something that I fell in love with as a paramedic, as a young EMT. I always loved being the person that got to the scene. Everything was going, people here on fire and everything else, and just taking a deep breath and saying, we got this, and working through the process. And that's something that maybe because I have attention deficit that I fell in love with, but it was something that I absolutely enjoyed. I also love opportunities for developing capabilities, planning, organizing, equipping, training, exercising. I love the whole poetic process of being a leader, as also being in a field of it as well. And that's something that's important. Too often we find ourselves just looking for the sexy parts of our field. And the really important thing is to really embrace and enjoy the whole aspect of it. And the final thing I really enjoy is developing teams. And that's the thing that like bamboo. It takes a long time to go ahead and get a strong team together. But when you have it, it is truly magical to see what happens. It's also really great to go ahead and find who has superpowers on the team and how do you play with them on the chessboard, and where do you put those individuals so that they can go ahead and actually better serve the team, but at the same time empower them and to make them go ahead and feel like they're a part of a bigger thing. Creating that cohesive group is so important. Trust, mutual respect, not something that happens overnight. And we'll talk about different type of leadership styles that can get you there. And the final thing is just, how do we go ahead and get to an outcome? And that's one of the things that I also love as well, is I'm about mission. I'm not a big compliance guy. I always look at there's two sides of the house, compliance versus mission driven. And I was taught by a bunch of Marines at a young age in this field, and I gravitated towards the mission aspect of it. Compliance is still important for what we do, but I feel that mission, when people really have a good idea what the mission is, they coalesce around it. I think it's able to them, everyone to be able to have that one common goal that we all work towards. So we'll switch to the next slide. Sorry, folks, I have to do the disclaimer. This is for educational purposes. What I'm talking about today does not represent the company that I work for in any way, shape, or form. It is just my sole views, and I wanted to make sure that we get this out there in the open. I also have another disclaimer that I have to go ahead and talk about. Next slide, please. I do have a personal relationship with the leader of this program. So Professor Murphy, actually, I met him both when we were graduate students at Tulane School of Public Health. And I knew after meeting him that he was someone that had to be on our team, and quickly sopped him up to run our MMRS program, the Metropolitan Medical Response System program. And then from there, Murphy just took off like a rocket and went on to different things, running our CRI program, to different aspects of what we do. And finally, before I left, he was our planning section chief on the team, and someone that I depended upon for everything, whether it be just sound advice or to be able to go ahead and know that he could take something off of my mental plate. And that's one of the greatest honors I think that anyone could ever have, is knowing that you can take something off of someone's mental plate and you take it all the way to completion. So that is a little bit of background of my other disclaimer as Murphy started today. So thank you, Murphy. I do love your bib and bottle there. That is pretty awesome. All right, so jumping into our conversation today. One thing I'm going to tell you guys, I am not a traditional lecturer. I want feedback. I love for people to raise their hand, ask questions, throw some of your comments inside here verbally, as well as in the chat. And hopefully we can have some support with just reading out loud to make sure that we have good conversation. I think that's the only way these type of things work well, is when we do have that ability to bounce things off of each other. If not, it's going to be a very dry experience of me just telling you things you guys probably already know about leadership. So please help me to make sure that this event goes really well today. So next slide, we're going to talk about why leadership matters. So the things that I want you to walk away with on this, and we talked about it already, is you want to go ahead and put coordination into an uncertain times periods. You want to be able to clearly communicate a vision, foster collaboration, make sure you can bring different people with diverse backgrounds and different thoughts to a common place. We talked about looking for people's superpowers. One of the hardest things that I think a leader can do is working on the internal and external stakeholders and figuring out how their different needs are intertwined and how to make sure that everyone understands that what you're doing at that particular moment is for the greater good. I think that's one of the hardest things that a leader has to accomplish, especially in the field that we're all in public health and crisis management, is making sure that everyone appreciates that this light may not be on you at the moment, but trust that it will come back in your way on the stage, and what else is happening on the stage so people can truly appreciate that. It's not a position. It's about influence and action. And we'll talk about management in a second as well. Far too often people rise from the management level to a leader level, a director or administrator type role, and they forget that they have to take that hat off of a manager and put the leadership hat on. One of the things that one of my best leaders ever told me was, your job is removing logs. As a leader, you are a log jam. You break logs up. You break log jams up. And really that's what it is talking to the people on your team, making sure if they have a log jam, how best can you help them go ahead and remove what's blocking them, because they're now the subject matter experts. We all started off as a subject matter expert. We moved up to the management type of a level, and then from there we became a leader. And the hardest thing is making sure that you take that hat off once again and allow the new subject matter experts to carry the torch while you go ahead and foster their growth and allow them to be able to carry on the tradition that you've already been provided as time went along as well. So you want to combine your vision, ethics, capabilities, adaptability, excuse me. One of the things that one of the leaders that I love to mimic in my life said to me is there's 3 questions you have to ask. What you're doing, is it morally wrong? Is yes or no? Is it ethically wrong? Yes or no? And is it illegal? Yes or no? If you could answer no to all 3 of those, then you're ready to go ahead and move forward with your decision that you need to make. But that was just a quick check that he taught me. And I still use it today. It's just thinking about that, especially when I was in the public sector. Private sector is a little different, but in the public sector, I always ran through that really quickly. And I know it sounds silly, but it allows you just to make sure that you take a second, take a deep breath, and really think about what type of decision you're about to make before you make it. And it's not a long stop, that breath, but it's one that allows you to really look at that. And the last thing is to lead by example. I think Professor Murphy took a picture of me back in the day, and I couldn't find it but I was mopping the floors in one of our public health exercises, and he thought it was the funniest thing in the world. And it was just because, I was mopping, but I always felt like you have to be able to do the job and lead by example. If you ask your team to do it, then you have to do it. Learned that at a very young age, right out of college, working in a bar in Bourbon Street. I couldn't ask any of them there to go ahead and do what I needed them to do as a manager unless I walked a mile in their shoes. And that has just continued to grow from there. So that's one of the other things, just make sure that you lead by example and make sure there's good collaboration as well as accountability. All right. So next slide. We talked a little bit about management and just going a little bit deeper into that. I think managers are unsung heroes. They're the people that make it happen. Leaders set direction, not saying anything away from what a leadership does. But at the end of the day, it's really difficult to go and get those views, your objectives, your what outcomes that the leadership team wants, and then go ahead and become the octopus that you see on the screen there, that manager that's trying to balance all the different aspects of the day, all the different things that are happening. So true unsung heroes in the whole hierarchy is what a manager has to do. Leaderships drive change. Managers create stability. Far too often, leaders will come in, and I think we've all seen this in our career. Some folks used to call them seagulls. They'll come in and they'll just do what they got to do on the beach. Not always something that people want to see, but they'll fly on in and create some chaos. And then from there, managers have to step in and create the stability based upon the chaos that just came in from a leader that's not as strong. So it's important to have both of them for good success. And the final thing is that you have the leaders that defines the vision, but management is what operationalizes it, They put it into tangible things. And in the incident command structure, you can look at it as an operations section chief. It's someone that then takes it and starts creating tactical plans and procedures that could then go ahead and meet what the vision is of the incident commander. And that's the particular example in that scenario. So the next one is going to be talking a little bit about crisis versus routine operations. The next slide. Everyone knows the truly big difference of this is that one is going to be looking more long-term, one is going to be looking more short-term. I'm not saying that in a crisis mode, you shouldn't be thinking about the next 72 plus hours. What I'm saying is the difference is a routine leader is really focused on long-term resilience. How can you build a team? How can you get order succession in place? How do you go ahead and take your team members and grow them and make sure that they feel empowered to continue to build this team in a successful way so that when you do have a crisis, your team is ready to mobilize and take that on. So that's one of the things that I think is extremely important to really think about is that routine day to day, you need to be talking to peers. You need to be going to conferences. You need to be doing things where you can hear what other people are doing to push the boundaries. And then from there, that's one of the things I used to love to hear all the time. It's just like, wow, that's a really great idea. How can we apply that where we are? And how can we tweak it just a little bit more? And I think that's how our successes happen. I think that's always what we happen in life is you hear a great idea, that epiphany someone else has. You then go ahead, internalize it, and you realize that that can be beneficial to you. And then you can actually take that a step further and pass that on to someone else who then can take it further and further. So it's really important to make sure that you look at those two big distinctions when it comes to those. We'll go to the next slide. So this is just a quick quiz, just to go ahead and let us see what we think each other, and this is me individually, so I think we'll have this pull up there. Perfect. So what we're going to do is ask everyone to look at the answers that are on the screen, and actually, will we be able to pull that back up, or do I have to kind of talk us through this? Awesome. So scenario, you're leading a response team during a sudden public health emergency. A large-scale foodborne outbreak has traced to multiple jurisdictions. Information is incomplete. Community anxiety is growing and the media is calling. Your team looks for your direction. So what you see there are 6 different ways to actually take this on. And number 1, A, do you rally the team with a motivation, vision, and protecting lives and emphasizing innovation? Or B, do you check in with your team's needs first, ensuring that they're supported before moving forward? C, do you assess skill levels of your team and adjust your leadership style depending upon who is present? D, do you call a quick huddle, solicit input, and decide as a group how best to move forward? E, do you immediately assign tasks and make clear, firm decisions without debate? Or F, do you reach out to partner agencies to align early, even before the facts are in? So we're just going to go ahead and look at that and just see what was the first thing that you would do in this leadership role based upon the scenario. And I believe they're going to pull that back up and just pick one letter. And we'll be able to see after where everyone falls.
Assuming everybody can see the menti.com chat.
So we're getting some votes coming in for E and F. We got one for C. Ooh, 2 for C. C's still looking like a winner there. No right answer here, folks. Wow, C's pulling out. So it looks like we have A and C is where a majority of the folks landed, with a good amount of folks coming in with B. Whenever we get the high sign from Murphy and Stacy, we'll go ahead and jump back to, oh, wow, B's popping up.
Yeah, we'll get 2 more people, I think, and then it'll be done. 1 more.
It's tied.
All right, I'll go ahead and close
Awesome.
it.
I think that's
That's good. All right.
All right. So we'll jump to the next slide when you get back in there, Stacy. And
Alrighty.
what it is we're going to be talking about these 6 different types of leadership styles. We'll go one more slide forward. There you go. And if you answered A, you were looking at this as a transformational leader. If you answered B, you looked at it as a servant leader. C would be a situational leader. D would be a democratic leader. E would be autocratic. And F would be collaborative. So it looks like majority of us went to a situational role in this particular scenario. Great, that's awesome. All right, so we'll plow ahead. We talked about all those 6 different styles of leadership. The one thing to remember, it's not a static one. It's mix and match philosophy. My daughter, who's 9, loves to go ahead and taunt me every morning when she goes to school. She takes 2 different color socks when she goes to school and puts them on. And it drives me nuts. But really, when I was thinking about this, that's the first thing that came to mind, is that you base your leadership style based upon the situation. Far too often we hear the terms as situational dependent. Sometimes people answer, well, how are you going to do something? Well, it's situational dependent. And I used to really hate that when I was starting off, and I was like, gosh, that feels like a non-answer. And as time went along, I was like, really is an answer. It really is situational dependent. And this is a prime example of what we just saw. There are so many different ways of tackling that particular situation. And there's no right or wrong answer. It's based upon you as a leader and the team that you're actually working with. And that's one of the things that we have here. All right, so we'll go ahead and move to the next slide. We'll start into this different types of leadership styles. And the first one is transformational leadership. So that's inspiring innovation. You want to promote trust. You want to empower your people. So you want to inspire your team. You want them to embrace change. You want to work towards a shared vision. This is so important, especially as we're dealing with the younger workforce. Everyone wants to know, where is the roadmap? Where are we headed to? In the past, people had the blind faith, the blind trust in a leader and just whatever, we'll do whatever you say. Now with our younger workforce, they really want to go ahead and see what they're trying to work towards. And that shared vision is extremely important with this. And you want to actually have the fostering of a collaboration and creativity type moment. And this transformational leadership program, that the leadership style, excuse me, allows for that. It really enhances motivation and increases engagement. If we can jump to the next slide, one of the opportunities I've had to be able to do this was when I was working with our public health team here. And it was really trying to get them to appreciate that the emergency management team and the public health team weren't too far different from each other. It was really some individuals that worked well together. And when you looked at it, it was like two parts of a DNA helix. And when you wound them together, it turned into something beautiful. So on the left-hand side of your screen, I sat down with the team and I said, hey, look, these are all the strengths of the emergency management team. And here's some of the strengths of the public health, and I didn't capture them all. So please don't go ahead and think that I'm thinking that one is stronger than the other. But if you look at it, there is some overlap. You'll see some things there that, oh, instant action plans, both of them have that. Both of them have partners. Both of them know how to do different things. But there's some core things that each group does better. Subject matter experts in the public health team, infectious disease, EPI, public health emergency preparedness, hyper-specialized individuals. On the other side of the house, you have people that are really good at common operational pictures, situational awareness, putting together a logistics program, being able to put out in virtual coordination and have situational updates and incident management assistant teams. So there is a group that's really good at the command and control process, and there's a group that's really good at subject matter expertise. And what we did in the jurisdiction we had here is blend those two together. And really, as we talk about other leadership styles today, this is the starting process, is really looking for that common ground and how everyone comes together in these particular situations. And I see something like that totally in COVID. You're absolutely right. This is one of the places where it became the most pronounced. And I had an opportunity to go speak to the CDC leadership after COVID. And it was really interesting to see. Went with a bunch of counterparts across the country through FEMA. We went through a leadership institute, then we went to see the folks at the CDC team, and we had state partners as well as local partners and tribal partners there. And we got to the CDC, not bashing them, but they didn't really have that really grassroots vision of what everyone else saw, as of how these two people can blend together. They at times thought, well, you guys are really good at moving boxes into warehouses and everything else, and we're going to do this. But no, really, when you start talking to the folks that are hyper local, like all of us on the call today, it's this blending that would made it successful. And as they continue to go ahead and see that at the federal level, I hope that as they continue to grow as well, they incorporate their processes as well. Because there's an only way we'll be successful for another pandemic is if we go ahead and bring ourselves together and lean on each other's strengths. So next one. So we're going to talk about transformational leadership. Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. You're absolutely right. Servant leadership. So cultivating trust and inclusivity. This is a really difficult one because a lot of people don't like it. They feel like they're giving up something when they're working inside a servant leadership type of a role. But you really build stronger teams through trust. Once again, I can't tell you how many times trust is a common theme in each leadership style. But you prioritize the needs of your team member, you build trust, you develop collaboration, and it actually helps produce productivity and morale. But it also helps the team dynamic. It actually promotes that diverse of thinking and allowing people to be able to feel it's a safe space to bring out other ideas. And you actually get more innovative solutions and problem solving. And this is one of the things that I think is so important for this, And the next slide, we're going to actually do a little case study of one of the examples of this. And it's a city-assisted evacuation plan. So during Hurricane Katrina, no question about it, failed. City of New Orleans failed. And it took actually something like that to ever get everyone to be able to say, we need to relook at this. We need to go ahead and make this better. We'll jump into the next slide. So one of the things that happened is that we said we had to develop a plan to help people to evacuate. And at the time, this was the only plan in existence of how to evacuate a major metropolitan area. So it was about a little over 1 million people that we were looking at evacuating through the southeast Louisiana, with the majority of it coming from Orleans Parish. But we wanted to create a process for evacuation of citizens that also had medical assistance, and people that had medical needs, because that was one of the things we found out that was one of the problems why people did not leave. One of the keys to our success is that we went ahead and determined the root cause. In the past, no one ever really stopped to figure out why did you not evacuate, and we'll talk about that in a second. And that was one of the really important things, is that we went ahead and determined what the root causes were. We found creative solutions to address these and the stakeholders' concerns. We didn't do traditional things, and we'll talk about that as well. And the final thing is we leveraged non-traditional resources to address the problem. So we were thinking outside the box. And the only way this happened is because of the leaders that we had in place at the time, Colonel Everett and Colonel Sneed, allowed us to go ahead and be in a place where we could just start throwing ideas out there. And that's what we're going to see in the next slide. So we worked with the Washington Post, the Kaiser Family Foundation, the Harvard School of Public Health, and we did a survey. We went to 8 shelters in the Houston area. We leveraged their expertise. And the sample size is not as big as we would like, but it was a pretty good sample size. And it went over a couple days period of time. But what you'll see there is we went and we looked for what the common things are of why someone didn't evacuate. I did not have a car or a way to leave. So a majority of the people said they had no way to get out. The next one, I just don't want to leave. Okay, well, that's a little harder. We asked them why, and we got down a little bit more into, well, I was worried my possessions would be stolen or damaged if I left. Looting, huge concern for people. Next one, I had to care for someone who was physically unable to leave. That's the one that we're like, wow, the medical aspect of this is going to be huge, and we have to figure out how to take that on. I was physically unable to leave. Once again, the medical aspect of that. And I didn't want to leave my pet. And while that was only like 9 people that said that, I will tell you this turned out to be one of the hardest planning processes in the whole thing, is figuring out how to safely evacuate pets. So we'll move forward. Like any true public health person, I went ahead and took this and created my model. I wanted to be able to go ahead and see what my logic model would be like. And this, you could talk about it as the end in mind, Franklin Covey. We talk about in public health, what's your long-term things? And what I wanted to be able to do is have a greater support for citizens who needed special assistance, create and maintain an environment where decisions to evacuate became more desirable than remaining behind. And finally, implementing measures to greatly enhance the security of the city's resources. So we talked about our assumptions. You'll see that over there. I'm not going to go into grave detail about those, but we talked about things that we just couldn't take on. We couldn't take on the fact that the levees would not sustain a Category 3 storm or higher. We talked about how many people we went ahead and chose 25,000 individuals that would need medical research, and 5,000 of those that would, 25,000 individuals that would need evacuation assistance, and 5,000 of those that would need medical assistance to get out of the area. We would have to take care of people with pets, and we had to also work with people that are registered and self-identified that they needed assistance. So one of the things that we were able to do, and I think Murphy just put it up there, is we collaborated on an article that went out about this, and it was published in a textbook. And it really allowed other people to be able to look at this in a completely different way, and to take it in when they were developing their processes and procedures, and to keep growing from there. So we created a foundation, and I know other jurisdictions have taken that and created some great evacuation plans based upon that. We'll jump to the next slide. This is what we created at the time. I didn't change it because this is as good as our PowerPoint was back in the day. So that's our skills were, and this is what we did. So you could go ahead and chuckle underneath your breath, but we tried to, on one PowerPoint screen, best describe how to do this. Now, the thing that created the main section inside there, the Union Passenger Terminal. If everyone's familiar with New Orleans, if not, I will go ahead and just give you a quick idea. Not far from City Hall, there is an Amtrak station called Union Passenger Terminal. All Amtrak trains come in there and they go out from that particular, they terminate there and they go back out. One day when I was driving home on the interstate, I looked over, and when I was stuck on the interstate, I looked over and I saw the train just whizzing on by. And I thought to myself, why in God's green earth has we never talked about using a train to go ahead and evacuate people? Never was it even discussed. And when we started having conversations with Amtrak, they told us that they would take the trains out empty. They had really strict requirements based upon HR when they could and could not be able to go ahead and help. We'll talk about HRs in a minute. But we went ahead and said, wow, that is a huge resource we need to leverage, as well as it was a great place that was centrally located in the city of Orleans that could bring buses, it could take trains, we could go ahead and move people easily to the airport. So it became our central location for evacuation processing center. This has changed over the years. I believe Murphy, and now it's a convention center is what it morphed into.
Smoothie King Center right behind the UPT.
Oh, Smoothie King. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. So it started off here. It was something that was easy for us. We controlled it. We could be able to move levers and push buttons to make things happen. And that's why we did it. So on the left, you could see that people came from different evacuation pickup points. We had to create 17 of those throughout the jurisdiction so that no one could say they had no way of getting out. We worked with our community partners. We developed a process, went ahead and got volunteers to meet people at those particular sites. And then from there, they shepherd them through buses to be able to get them to the Union Passenger Terminal, where we could figure out how best to get them out of the location. If someone needed medical resources, NMRs is what we call them, someone that needs medical resources, really profound there. We went ahead and dispatched an ambulance to them. It was a really critical resource, so we had to make sure that we controlled the process, and it wasn't just a nilly-willy start pushing things all over the place. So they would come to the Union Passenger Terminal. Senior centers, we made sure that those individuals were not lost in the mix, and they had their own process of how to come into the evacuation process as well. And on the bottom, hotels. Hotels wanted to be able to go ahead and do their thing for their patrons. So we just went ahead and made sure that they knew what the bigger plan was, and we cannibalized their plan in the sense that we brought it into the bigger plan to make sure that everyone knew that if there was someone that was staying at a hotel that was a visitor to our city, that they were able to safely get out. If they needed additional resources to do it, we would mobilize those and push it their way. But we would never survive as a city if our tourism didn't go ahead and showcase that they were ready for these type of situations. And that was one of the successes, is that the tourism industry showed that they could take care of those individuals. Hospitals, nursing homes, and LTACs. That was a huge lift that was taken off of our back. That was taken on by the State Department of Public Health, Dr. Guidry, Dr. Prats, went with a whole host of individuals, took this on as something that they said, we will take it, you don't need to worry about it. And I could tell you, we went ahead and didn't even blink when they said that we could get out of that particular mission. And then you'll see the bracket with the four green boxes. So we could either we could use evac buses, Amtrak, people that need medical resource buses. So those were our air-conditioned buses. And finally, ambulance or paratransit. And they would go to a state or FEMA regional shelter. So that was the process that we had in place. We used the airport for the individuals that were in the tourism process. Everyone else, we went ahead and used one of those other categories to get them to out of harm's way, to Baton Rouge, to another particular location in Louisiana, to be able to evacuate. So next slide. So the only way to really do this is to make sure that everyone has that common understanding. And my first venture with HR was with this. And that's when I learned, wow, we can actually take HR, which the military leverage with other people leverage as well, and just determine what it is. So what we did is we went ahead and created our own HR timeline. And we said that everything would have to stop 12 hours prior to hurricane landfall, the far hand, right-hand side of your screen. And we just backed everything up from there. And what it allowed us to do is to be able to have a good understanding, all the different parts and procedures that didn't have to happen, and when we had to actually go ahead and kick off the different plans. So you'll see at H-84, things were happening already. That's crazy. That's almost like a hurricane off the Ivory Coast of Africa. But we had to be able to see with that threat coming to our area and all the different resources we had to mobilize, these are the things we had to start doing. And you'll see that all the different call out boxes along the way. At H minus 60 is when we had to go ahead and make a decision, go, no go. And that's when we started moving resources around in our jurisdiction. We gave ourselves a whopping 6 hours to achieve this because of our timeline, and it was a huge lift. We thought we were ready for this when it came to Hurricane Gustav, and we had all of our logistics and buttoned up. We had all of our contractors ready to go and everything else. What do you think happened when we went ahead and pulled this plan off for Hurricane Gustav? The buses didn't show up. The contractor pulled out on us at the last minute. We had to go ahead and pivot. But once again, we had another backup to the plan that allowed us to be able to do that. But that 6 hour window was extremely important for us to actually execute the city assisted evacuation plan from H minus 54 all the way down to H minus 12. H minus 12 is when the last Amtrak train would leave and the last airplane would leave and MSY would shut down at New Orleans International Airport. And then from that last 12-hour period, we would just be in a hunker down mode. We'd make sure our public safety people were taken care of. We had refuges as a last resort for them. We had big, huge pods that we would drop that had all the resources that they needed in it. No longer did our public safety folks have to forage. They had what they needed to be able to, in a unified environment, police, fire, and EMS, have what they need to be successful while they hunker down and as they got ready to go ahead and do the response. That was the other lesson that we learned too with our public safety partners. They always would go into individual locations and shelter. And what we went ahead and did is said, no, we're creating task force, we're creating strike teams. We're going to put people together and we're going to take one of those concerns off of your back by making sure you have the resources you need to be successful. So pause here for a second, see a couple things thrown around the chat. Any questions about this? Any comments, successes in other jurisdictions with things like this? Really just affords me an opportunity to take a quick sip of a fluid before I jump into the next aspect of the city assisted evacuation plan. Murphy, do you have anything that you want to add for color and commentary since you were part of the process?
I would just say this is a really good example of how you are going to be forced to play, and many of you may have already experienced this, but the old adage of public health is a team sport. The entirety of protecting our population is also a team sport. And so when you start thinking about who you're going to have to partner with or who you might want to partner with, not have to in a way of derogatory, I have to partner with this person, but those people and agencies and departments across your own jurisdiction to pull something like this off is really speaking to how your leadership style is going to interface with whatever leadership style those folks have that are leading their own jurisdiction or their own organization in your jurisdiction. Having that understanding in the planning phase, Matt referenced the POETI, the planning, organizational training, exercise, all that stuff. When you're in the blue sky days, meeting those individuals outside of your own current sandbox to help understand who they are, not just for a sheer camaraderie and hey, I need to collaborate with this person, but truly understanding who they are. So that if you ever had to work with them in a moment that really propels you into solving a problem, solving any type of crisis moment, or whether it's a hurricane evacuation crisis or some sort of public health crisis simmering in the background and some outbreak, foodborne outbreak or otherwise, you want to know what their leadership style is in a way. You want to have a relationship with them so that you can better meet their expectations. Remember how we kicked this whole program off with the emotional intelligence and having you understand yourselves a little bit better. Not that there's a ding to any of us with how Timothy Dickens showed you areas for growth and areas for improvement in some ways. Having a lens of that and understanding those potential partners so that you can facilitate a stronger, more efficient relationship and therefore propel you to a quicker response in your own jurisdiction is going to be tremendously beneficial. And I think this is a really good example, and I'm glad Matt brought this up because this is a really complex situation, something New Orleans faced in a way, and maybe some of you others have experienced this in some ways too. Katrina wiped us pretty much at the beginning of time. We had to start really over in every way, shape, or form. And in doing so, we marched through without the silos that are typically in departmental structures and in jurisdictional structures. We did it together, arm in arm. And so that allowed us to grow together rather than individually. And maybe that's something that we can also, I guess, help push through this program is don't be afraid to go arm in arm with those other agencies and departments and sectors and whatever your jurisdiction's layout is like. But this is a really good example of that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You're absolutely right. The silver lining of all the things that happened was it really was a control alt delete moment for us. It was a reboot and allowed us to be able to go ahead and say what we did in the past is not going to work for the future. And we don't have the resources that we had in the past. How do we work together? How do we collaborate? And that's truly when we started to see the walls break down and we started to see the lane lines move. And we saw that public safety came together as a family and work together to our common goal. And it was so awesome to be able to see that and to actually put it into action when we started developing strike teams and task force to be able to handle issues. And no one even blinked when you went ahead and took a paramedic, a firefighter, and a police officer and put them on a boat to say, this is your particular mission. They worked seamlessly together. That was pretty awesome. Some other places, I think you can go ahead and attest, not so easy to be able to accomplish. Some places up in the Northeast, it's a bitter battle as to who gets to the scene first and who's going to take control. So it's really, we're really blessed by having that opportunity to reboot. So we'll jump to the next slide and then I will see if Murphy thinks it's a good time to take a pause. But this next one is something that, to round off the city assisted evacuation plan, is the transportation triage criteria. So we talked about the fact that my background is EMS as a paramedic, and I went ahead and thought to myself, how can we quickly identify someone and determine what type of transportation need they have and make sure that everyone has a good idea based upon the way they were categorized? And I was like, what do we do all the time? Oh, triage. Makes total sense. Anyone that understands that knows that there's a color code associated with it. So you have the green, the yellow, the red. But we threw a couple of different colors inside there. And what we did is we had white and blue, and we added it there. We didn't do black because we didn't want anyone to feel like they were deceased, especially someone that did understand this or talk to someone. They'd be like, oh, they're saying you're dead. No, that's not what we did. So it didn't really think about this until after, but blue was anyone 65 and older. Now that I'm getting closer to that age, I kind of like, wow, I call people blue hair by doing that. No, it was just an easy color for us to be able to achieve that. So white is when we went ahead and said anyone that's general population does not meet any of the following criteria. They were white. They went ahead and went to the Morial Convention Center. They went through an evacuation process. If someone we actually took our paramedics and put them at the different evacuation locations, as well as walk in the line in Union Passenger Terminal. And they're the ones had all these color bands. And they quickly looked at someone, talked to them for a couple minute or two, and they were able to quickly assess what category they were. And that's how they got into these other things. So if they're 65 and older, they're one caregiver, a dependent, spouse, that went together. So they would go to Union Passenger Terminal, and they would either evac by the rail car or an air-conditioned bus. So what we knew is that these individuals could decompensate if we were put on a bus with no air conditioning, sitting on the interstate going 5 miles an hour. Not going to work out. They had to be able to go and have at least a cool environment so they didn't overheat. And also we knew that a lot of these individuals, and at the time, New Orleans wasn't the healthiest place in the world. Those people had a lot of underlying medical conditions. So what we were trying to do is hedge our bet and make sure that they did not turn into a bigger health problem. The next category, which was green, was we call that category B, needs medical resources. So anyone that's self-manageable, renal failure, diabetes, things along those lines, that if they didn't get dialysis in a day or two, they would be in a big problem. If they didn't have their insulin, they didn't have food, that would be a concern as well. Those individuals, once again, Union Passenger Terminal, went out by rail car or air-conditioned bus. The next category where we had to do a little additional logistics triaging is the yellow. So those individuals were categorized based upon the fact that they required assistance. They were either bedridden, they were wheelchair dependent, ventilator, mentally ill, homeless, etc. They went into a yellow category. So if they were self-manageable, then we would go down and use a paratransit bus that would take them to the Union Passenger Terminal, once again, by rail or bus. If not, if they were not self-manageable, the triage unit will arrange for an ambulance, limited critical resource. So we kept all those in an actual staging area, and we would actually, dispatch them based upon the fact of who really needed it after we triaged. Because before it was on a 911 call, you send an ambulance, and then next thing you know, you lost the resource. So we would actually bring the resources in prior to, on the HR line, you'll see that when you get a chance to digest that later. And those resources, we was one and done. So we knew that once we loaded up that ambulance, we probably were not going to see it again. If it was early enough, they could probably come sneak back in to the area, but truthfully, we probably had one trip out of these ambulances. So we had to make it worth it. Those individuals would go to the TMOSA, which is a temporary medical operations and staging area that was in Baton Rouge at LSU, Louisiana State University. It was a perfect location. It was a quick shot for these individuals to get to a place where they could continue to go ahead and seek medical care from the federal government and our partners. And the Bureau of EMS went ahead and helped us with ambulances to achieve that mission. So extremely grateful for that. The last thing is category C individuals. So they're critical, they're acute psychosis, acute detox, exacerbations of any things that are in category B. Those would once again be triaged, and they would either go to a regional hospital by air evac or a local emergency department, and then finally go out by ground transport. We knew that we had to be able to get these people stabilized and get out. We did not want to go ahead and clog up the system with these individuals. We wanted our healthcare providers to assist us in that process, and then we could safely get those individuals out. We weren't going to put anyone, I know one of the things that everyone thinks about when they see this, you're going to put someone in acute psychosis in a helicopter? No, we weren't going to do that. We knew that would go ahead and turn out quite poorly. But that was one of the things that we could leverage for some of the other patients that were in that category. Once again, limited critical specialized resource that we had to make sure that we leveraged only when necessary. So that's how we went ahead and tackled this. It was a pretty big elephant that we had to eat. We had a very limited time to be able to achieve this. We had one calendar year from the time that Hurricane Katrina came to making sure they were ready for the next one. We had to have a plan drafted. It continued to be updated as time went along. But the first true opportunity that we had to test this was Hurricane Gustav, and we successfully evacuated Southeast Louisiana. It was a great team effort. And one of the things that happened is because we developed a team over time. We grew together, we trusted each other, and we went ahead and we were able to work as a cohesive unit to make this happen. So with that being said, I think it's probably a good time to take a quick pause. Murphy, if you think it's appropriate. I'm not sure how long you normally do, but we can take a pause.
10 minutes. I think 10 minutes will be good. That'll cut us in half here.
Okay, awesome. All right, folks, we'll see everyone back in 10 minutes. Ready to get going?
I'm going to drop a few things in the chat. I appreciate everybody chiming in and thumbs up or acknowledging them. It's kind of extra nuggets to what Matt's talking about. One of your cohort mates is now the person responsible for this very plan. So Tom Shrilla on the call, I think he just dropped something in the chat, but just so you're aware, in future breakout sessions and as you get to know one another even better, that is now his primary responsibility. So any kind of conversation you want to have on that front from a current moment, that's it. So I think when we start thinking about leadership styles and looking at how we approach certain situations, not only for our own team, as Matt's going to really detail out here, but again, as I mentioned earlier, thinking about how that relationship is going to work. I don't know if anybody's ever been in front of a micromanaging leader before, but it is vastly different with your expectations and how you have to then communicate both vertically and horizontally and beneath you in a way, in order to meet the expectations of that micromanaging leader versus that laissez-faire type of leader who maybe you don't see, but maybe once or twice a year, as opposed to the micromanager leader who we would see maybe every day for the year. It's a vastly different approach, not right or wrong in some ways, just personalities. And you got to know what that person is thinking as well. So not only are we looking at our leaderships internally, but who are our partners? So, all right, Matt, take it over.
Way cool, Tom. Congratulations. Great job carrying the torch forward, and hopefully you'll be willing to share the great work you guys have done, so I can take a look at it, because I love to see how far you guys have taken it from the time we started. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. And really appreciate the foundation y'all built, because really that's all still the basic, and it's impressive that y'all did that all in a year, as I'm sure you know. But we've been building on it, for the last several years, but it's still really based on what y'all built. So it's pretty cool.
Murphy had dark hair before we started the process. So.
That was you. Wasn't the process.
I enjoyed that picture of him with the bib in the bottle, because that's actually my cubicle now. I sit at that desk every day.
Oh, awesome. Well, we did it for Murphy because he used to complain all the time. So that was his little Wawa bottle.
Love it.
Congratulations, Tom. Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for joining the team. The next leadership style, folks, is my favorite. I know that we talked about the fact that mix and match, but I'll be honest with you, the situational leadership is something that I find myself going to often in my pulling out that arrow from my quiver. So the beautiful thing is you're adapting to the team dynamics and context. It's really that one, you're a chameleon. You're constantly changing based upon the environment that you're in. This is truly that situational dependent moment. You adapt your style based upon what team members you have at the moment, the dynamic of the team, as well as the challenges that you have. And really what you're doing is, how do you rudder kick the boat based upon what's being thrown at you at that moment? It's a very flexible process. It really allows you to change the way you're doing based upon the needs of your team. It really, once again, trust and cooperation. I think that's the theme that you see through everything. Trust and cooperation. It creates that environment for people to feel that way. It definitely balances the various leadership approaches that you have and that you want to bring to the table, and that promotes resiliency and collective growth. That's the one thing you'll see on this one that you may not see in the other ones, that resiliency aspect of it. It really allows your team to be able to bounce back when they actually have that moment where they may have a gut punch, but they're quickly able to go ahead and regroup and move forward. And this is one of the things that I particularly like about this. You see, there's some pros there. The cons, though, the one thing that I think is, you have to have strong emotional intelligence. You as a leader have to have that, as well as the people on your team. This is not something to take lightly, because it can go ahead and people may feel it's a little inconsistent, because your process is like Professor Murphy said, you kind of get used to a leader style, and that's how people then go ahead and work. This one is like, which way are they coming from now? But the beautiful thing about it is that if your leader is able to accomplish this, and you as leaders are able to accomplish this, it allows you to be able to take your team to that next level and address the situation. That then takes me into my next slide. And I would love to see a thumbs up if anyone's read this book. It is actually something that I had an opportunity to meet General McChrystal at his institute up in DC and go through his class. If you have not read this, folks, I highly suggest you do it. It is such an incredible philosophy that he had. And it was something that was so out of the box for someone in his particular role that someone would go ahead and question, how did he actually pull it off? But such an inspiring individual. His company has grown tremendously in the consulting environment. They're taking on their other opportunities. But the beautiful thing is that he's able to take his philosophy in the public sector and the private sector and really show teams how they could go ahead and grow. So for the purists that are checking all the different leadership styles, this is not truly a situational leadership style, but it embodies, some of the core principles of it, and then took it above and beyond. So it's really an evolution. It started off with kind of a situational leadership type of a base, and then he grew it from there. So what you'll see on the screen is really the morphosis of the process of typical hierarchical structure you see in public safety, military, so on and so forth. The admirals tell then, or the generals tell the colonels, who then tell so on and so forth what to do. What he went ahead did is saw that the command of teams concept was something that was occurring, and he was over the special operations teams, and they would go ahead and work as little units. and they would actually do the things they needed to do. They would come together for the bigger coordination meetings, but they go back and work in their small units. And there wasn't a lot of cross-pollination, cross-collaboration. And that's when he got to that final thing. And that's where all those different lines are. It's like breaking down the silos, breaking down the walls, and doing something so non-traditional and saying, we're all going to talk together. And that was one of the things that was so interesting, is that he, on his daily brief, went ahead and took it from just the command staff to a command staff plus someone with the boots on the ground all the way in theater, and made sure everyone had that common understanding of what the intel was and understood where they're going to go. He also took something that would go on for hours and scaled it down to a shorter period of time. And what his goal was is to make sure everyone had that common understanding and making sure they knew what the mission was to be able to achieve it. So with that, the next couple slides, couple key quotes that he shared that actually resonated with me. You'll see them on the slides. I'm not going to read them, but you can read them as I'm speaking. But there's kind of like a couple core principles. I would probably say about 7 or so that I took away from it, as well as I think it was what he shares as well. And one of the main ones is adaptation over terrorism. So what he wanted to be able to do with his process is to prioritize the ability to adapt to the situation. Don't be rigid. Build the capacity, build the capability that allows you to be able to go ahead and move and rudder check and change your direction without being able to go ahead and do like a battleship type of moment where it takes a long time for you to go ahead and turn around. He wanted to be able to quickly adjust and not over optimize. So really that gets to that particular question is, how can you make your teams more effective in these type of things and adapt? Shared consciousness over information hoarding. We talked about that real quickly there, about his daily briefs and when it opened it up. Truly what he thought is that if we get more people to be able to understand what's happening, use the daily syncs, use visualizing tools, keep people informed. One of the things that I had the opportunity to do is, before you host a Super Bowl, as in the public safety world, you get to go see the 2 Super Bowls before it. Not the actual Super Bowls, but you get to see how 2 jurisdictions do it. And it was really great because one of the places we went to, very, very incredible jurisdiction, very well organized, lots of capabilities, and so on and so forth. But one of the things that happened during their daily brief is their GIS person came in with a map, put it on the wall, and halfway through the meeting, they had to take the map down. They went back out, produced another map, heard some more information, took the map down, went back out, came back with another map. So it wasn't evergreen. It was a very static process. And what I learned that particular day as a leader is that I need to make sure that I had a process for all the people that I worked with, that I synchronized with, to be able to have that real-time information, to have that common operational picture, so that it's not static, it's a very dynamic piece. And that's one of the things that I took away from that particular situation. And that's also something that General McChrystal went ahead and did as well, is make sure that you sync, make sure you use good visualization tools that are kept fresh and allows people to have that good idea. Networking over hierarchies. We all know this. This is something, if you're in public health, it's like a core part of your DNA. You have to go ahead and communicate. You got to develop relationships. You got to foster inter-teams as well as outside your team's coordination. It's working with your stakeholders, it's working with your internal and external partners, so on and so forth. Cross-functionality is so important. And you want to make sure that you build those networks. And that's one of the things that he pushed as well in this particular model. And one of the things that's so important as we continue to grow, I think someone said some of the things I talked about, the DNA helix between public health and emergency management, is being able to find that common ground of where you can leverage each other's strengths. And that's where the networks come into place. This next one I thought was really cool. And when he talked about it and I read it in the book, I was like, wow, I never looked at it from this perspective. You want to be more of a gardener and less of a chess player. And the reason why he said this, if you think about chess players, they're sitting looking at a board. They're really thinking about what their next move is going to be. And they're one move at a time. And yes, they're thinking about what the consequences of that move would be and what their next move would be. But they're really concentrating on one move. What the gardener does in a leadership role, if you'd imagine what a gardener does at home, they can't force something to grow, but they provide the best environment for it to go ahead and grow. And that's what the philosophy he incorporated his process as well, is he cultivated the garden. He made sure there was food. He made sure there was good water, sunlight, so on and so forth. And he made sure that he was not micromanaging every move. He wanted to create that environment. And that's what was successful, is that he allowed that to grow. And then his teams went ahead and took advantage of that and grew into some incredible organizational structures. Next slide. He imparted execution over scripted direction. This is something that I think is so important. Sometimes we get so wrapped around a plan and actually making it something that is the gospel truth, and really is more of less of a standard operation procedure and more of a guideline. And that's what I think that's really important, is when you're developing your processes and procedures as a leader, think about it as a guideline. Think it as something that you can then go ahead and easily change and move along as time changes. I think everyone in this room knows that your pandemic plan was thrown out the window as soon as COVID came. We all thought we had great pandemic plans and we had great processes and procedures. I know that Murphy worked on one with me as a consultant, as when I was doing both roles, to make sure that we had a really strong infectious disease plan here. Went ahead and had to really revamp our whole process based upon what was presented to us at the time. So great work goes into that, but also make sure that you develop your guidelines in a way that allows you to go ahead and be more effective when you're starting to deal with these situations. Being resilient over predictable, though, once again, make sure you can adapt and thrive in any stressful situations, and fostering trust or tribal loyalties. This is the one that was so interesting. When you start dealing with people in special operations, they don't like cross-pollinating. The Navy SEALs don't like working with the Delta. It doesn't like working with the Rangers. It doesn't like working with this. It's this little fiefdoms. And what he did is he went ahead and said, no, we're one team, one fight. We're working towards a common goal. And he got them, like that first slide, to start having this intertwining and sharing information. And why did you have to wait for someone's intel to go all the way up to headquarters to come back to another group over here to be able to rudder kick their boat and change their process? You should be able to talk to each other and be able to pass information. And that's one of the things that was really important in his particular philosophy. So next slide, I was thinking about this after looking at that, and how can we apply this to public health leadership? And I think it comes down to 4 big categories in things that we talked about already, but shared consciousness. We want to promote that real-time information sharing across all our different units. Far too often we would be in our silos, and our epi folks would be working on information, but wouldn't share that with the proper people that could then be disseminated with a bigger group. And that's one of the things I think is important. Have that shared consciousness, develop ways to work together, and promote that real-time information sharing. Empower execution. Enable your field teams, your different folks that are out and about, and folks that may not be traditionally in the 4 walls of a health facility or a public health process, to be able to act quickly. Give them guidelines and allow them to go ahead and work within that. Give them protocols and allow them to be able to change based upon the way things are that they're dealing with at the incident location. Far too often we see people that say, I'm the incident commander. Where are you? I'm back over here in a building, in a bunker, or on the top floor or somewhere else. How far are you from the incident? Probably about 200 miles from it. Hard to truly be the incident commander when you're not at the incident site. So really the people that are best equipped to be able to change and adapt are the folks that are seeing the problem right there. Empower those individuals with the resources they need and the plans and procedures that they need to be successful. Trust-based networks, I think it's so important. We talked about that in the leadership styles so far. It's just making sure that we have that confidence for making sure that we can work together for these large-scale type of emergencies. And we'll talk about that in a second, of how you build that trusted network. And finally is that system level adaptability. I can't even speak right now, excuse me, adaptability. So make sure that you transform those typical hierarchical processes into dynamic processes, responsive networks, things that allow you to be able to coordinate your crisis response. And that's some of the core things I think we can take for General McChrystal and apply it to public health. And I know there's a lot more, but those are just some of the quick things that came to mind as I was going back and thinking about his work in this particular environment. So we'll move on to the next one, the democratic leadership style. I think a lot of folks went ahead and went with this when we did our poll, the essence of collaboration. And really what it is, it's open dialogue. It's enabling diverse perspectives. It engages stakeholders. It allows better outcomes, better ownership of the process and procedures. It gets back to the whole common thing of getting trust and respect amongst the team and creating that whole resilient process as well. One of the things that is a concern in this, it is time consuming. It's maybe not the best thing when you're trying to quickly address the situation. So you as a leader have to weigh that. So yes, you have the pros, you have the enhances buy-in, leverages collective experience, promotes innovation, so on and so forth. This may be something that you leverage on those blue sky days. When you're looking at that strategic plan that you have of your group and you're thinking of the long run, this is what I would like to take my organization to be. But when it comes time to an actual incident, democratic leadership may not be the best, but think about it based upon you and your style and what you're working with there. So that's one of the things that I always wanted to go ahead and share with that. That then takes me into another case study about DM 932. So when I was thinking back about this incident that happened in New Orleans, it was actually something that was very democratic in that regard. If we could jump to the next slide. This happened back in the time frame of 2005 to 2008. And I don't remember the exact date, but I apologize for not having that right on my finger here. But over 100 miles of the Mississippi River is impacted. As you'll see there on the right-hand side, a barge went ahead and it was struck. It went into the piling of the Crescent City connection. It leaked oil all up and down the Mississippi and went onto the ships. It went ahead and impacted our environment. We had some critical species that were impacted because of this. And you can see the sheen in the Mississippi River right by the French Quarter in the first photo there. It was not a good situation. And it was an extended period of time where we were unable to go ahead and move ship traffic up and down the Mississippi River. So major environmental impacts, over 1,000 impacted vessels were moored either on the Mississippi or out in the Gulf trying to get in. One of the biggest suppliers of, actually the biggest supplier of powdered sugar was unable to go ahead and move their resources in and out to be able to meet the needs of the people that they serve, as well as if you think of the upstream impacts of this as well. Mississippi River goes pretty high, folks. Don't want to insult everyone's intelligence, but we tend to forget about how something that happens down the Gulf and what the ripple effect is all the way up in our northern part of our country. So this was a pretty significant event, and there was about $275 million a day worth of impact that was occurring. So there was a huge need to get this open. This is one of our first times of really partnering with the United States Coast Guard. And they did it to make sure that we could continue to grow. We started the process of training with them and going to classes about the incident command system and working with them in exercises. And this was the first big incident when they invited us to the table. And I say us, the locals, they were impacted in the particular areas. And it was great because we were able to be a key stakeholder, and we were able to leverage and work with an unified incident command. And we also worked as liaison officers for our particular jurisdictions, making sure they knew what was going on and vice versa. So a really good process that they had to be able to bring us all together to work towards this process. And the public-private partnerships were so important here as well. So this is just an example of how even our government partners saw that there was a need to go ahead and build that trust, build that collaboration, build that coordination amongst all these players so that we could continue to grow as a cohesive unit. So very, very astute of them to see that and to actually implement that. And that was just an example of that democratic type of a style. We're going on to the next one. This is one that when you see it, you cringe a little bit. Autocratic leadership, people start having negative connotations with that. It has a place. And some people think, oh, a leader like that doesn't care about anything else. Sometimes you have to have a central decision-making process. Sometimes a leader has to take full control and make independent decisions to be able to get immediate action and to have clear direction. It can happen as something as just managing an emergency patient, or it could be something much larger. It really depends upon it, but there are times and places where this style of leadership is extremely important. You'll see it's useful in crises. It offers a clear chain of command. Far too often, people get confused as to who are they supposed to be able to work with and coordinate with. This offers that really clear, concise process and offers rapid decision-making. You can suppress innovation with this, and some people can understand that. Also reduces morale and trust at times. But I think it has a place in the whole process as well. So we'll jump into the next one that I want to talk about. And based upon this particular leadership style, I think it happened during Deepwater Horizon. And I'm going to say why from our perspective. You will jump to the next slide there. So as the city of Orleans, or Orleans Parish, excuse me, we were just one little piece in this whole big thing that was going on. And really, it was actually being run from a location of area command over in Homa. And we were getting pretty much told these are the type of things that are going to happen, and this is how we're going to address it, and this is why. Because it was much bigger than us. We were just one small piece in this bigger response to what was going on. 5 Gulf Coast states. I have never been a part of a response that was that big. And it was something that was really impressive to see, is the coordination effort. And I tip my hat to the folks in the Coast Guard and to all the folks they brought in to be able to do this, is to coordinate at that area command level and then make sure that each of the states felt like they had that autonomy to do what they needed to do, but still synchronizing their efforts over this Gulf Coast region. The whole government approach, and once again, my true first time of seeing Unified Area Command in action. Didn't really get to see it too much on where we were on the Southeast. Happens often on the West Coast, and I used to always love listening to the stories of how our West Coast partners were able to implement it all the time. And I kept thinking, gosh, that'd be so cool to be able to go ahead and put into operation. This is the first time I got to see it, and that's really got me as excited as a leader to figure out other opportunities to be able to do that. So our success there was that we were able to synchronize across numerous jurisdictional boundaries. And that's once again because of the process they had. They were dictating some of the things that needed to happen and limited resources once again to be able to happen to it. But it still maintained that authority of the political subdivisions. And that's what's so important about this. And that's why I was able to leverage Area Command in a later response on something else that we'll talk about in a slide or two. And that's one of the things that I took away from this particular moment in time. All right, the next one will be our last leadership style to talk about. And really it's this collaborative cross-boundary leadership one. It's the one that encompasses so many. That once again, you see the trust, you see shared goals, you see the strengthened team dynamic, communication, cooperation, and so on and so forth. It does have that con of a slower consensus. It really depends upon a true trusting team with great relationships. You have to foster that throughout your growth as a leader and your team development in order for this type of leadership process to work. It's very essential in public health emergencies, I think. I think this type of a process is used often. And it really encourages that sharing of resources and promoting this unified response. So this is something that I find myself leaning to a lot when dealing with public health issues in the past of my career. And I think it's something that's important. So that'll take us to a next kind of, I guess you could say another case study. And it's going to talk about 3 particular things. So it'll be just a progression with this. So it's going to talk about a college football playoff in Atlanta. So when I moved over here, we were lucky to get, next slide please, 3 particular special events in a row. 2018, we had the college football playoffs. 2019, we had the Super Bowl. 2020, NCAA Final Four. And we're like, holy cow, what were these special events people thinking? This is going to be 3 years of an absolute nightmare. And it wasn't, because we were able to go ahead and build off of each particular incident and grow from there. But the first one had its challenges. So the college football playoff, we had a lot of problems with balancing competing priorities for various stakeholders. We didn't have a process in place that allowed us to be able to go ahead and manage this. We came from an environment where, once again, everyone's very siloed. Fire would do their plan, police would do their plan, public health had theirs, EMS, so on and so forth. And we didn't figure out how to really deconflict that well with this. We didn't have, we had a lot of limited resources, and we weren't that great of working with it. We got to a process that everyone wanted to have what we only had 2 or 3 of. So you can imagine everyone wanted to have the ability to go ahead and clear an area with dogs, with explosive dogs, and there weren't many of those to go around. There's only so many tactical teams to go around, so many EOD teams to go around. And we were trying to all compete for that particular resource to make sure that our goals were met. But we did have some successes with this, and that's one of the things that was really great. We created a multidiscipline core planning team, the first time we ever did that in our particular area here in Metro Atlanta. And we were able to get different points of view together to work towards a common goal. We conducted daily coordination meetings. You may think, oh, geez, that's nothing after going through COVID. At this particular point in time, it was a big thing for us to actually get all these executives, all our elected officials, our external stakeholders together in one room, and to be able to go ahead and cross-pollinate was a huge victory in our jurisdiction. And that gets back to some of the things that we heard about in Team of Teams. I wanted to make sure that we had that type of an opportunity where we could coordinate and work together and share information. And that's how we did it. Every day, 1 hour, and we knocked it out, and we were actually better for it. And then the other thing you'll see there as a success was real-time common operational picture and situational awareness. I learned based upon what we saw in other jurisdictions, and we didn't want to have that moment where a map was being ripped off the wall 2 or 3 times during a meeting. So we created a process that met the needs of our individuals, and we went ahead. It was a dynamic process. So I'm a big fan of WebEOC. Some people may or may not like it, but I was a huge fan of it, and we were able to go ahead and leverage it and build custom processes inside this. I say we. I had an incredible individual, administrator, Donnie Reese, that made this all happen. So he is, if you ever have something going on in your jurisdiction that you're trying to figure out how to leverage a common platform like that, I can tell you without a doubt, I can pass on his information. Professor Murphy's worked with him a few times as well. A true diamond individual with this, and it's someone that does it differently. He listens to what the end needs are, and he builds a process around what the end needs are, as opposed to someone that builds a process and then offers it to someone, saying, now you have to use it this way. So just a little shout out to that. Huge success there. And we were able to share our successes with the community on that particular platform. One of the areas for improvement is that we create a process for management of critical and specialized resources. We talked about that, did not have that in place, and this is something that we're able to achieve with this. And then we were able, we enabled various authorities to maintain their own leadership style. That was something that we did not see with this, and I'll show you how we fix that for Super Bowl. So next slide. The road to the Triple Crown started here. We were buried so deep in the organizational structure, it was an afterthought almost. We had to tell folks, no, there is something more than crisis management. And consequence management was misunderstood. It never included public health. Nowhere on the org chart was public health ever organized. Human services was never called out. So really what we did is we went ahead and created our own consequence management, common operational picture subcommittee, all the way buried down deep into the thing. But we went ahead and created a mass casualty group, our public health group, human services and mass care, the common operational picture, and severe weather. And this is how we started. And this little process went ahead and morphed into something so much bigger in the next particular event, which is the Super Bowl, because of the foundation we built. We had the helix moment with our public health partners, our agriculture partners, our biosurveillance partners, and mass fatalities, so on and so forth. And what we did is we were able to bring that to this bigger crisis management piece and showcase how this cohesive unit can then take care of so many other problems that they were not aware of. So really, all that particular work, all that foundation building, all those different types of leadership styles or leverage came to fruition in this particular moment. And then we were able to capitalize it off of the next event, which we'll fast forward to that slide to the big game, which is in 2019, Super Bowl 53. We expanded our approach to this. And we went ahead finally, and I was able to leverage area command. I was so excited. We brought folks in from the West Coast. We were able to get all the command structure from the different parts of the city, and we sat around and we learned together. We went through all the courses. We went through practicing together and everything else. We fine-tuned our process, so when it came time for that week-long activation, it made sense. we were able to meet one of those other needs of making sure that people were able to still be the masters of their own domain. So you'll see on that slide to the right, Unified Area Command was in the middle, and underneath that you had incident command posts. So we had a total of 13 incident command posts. The ones in green, they had jurisdictional authority of their particular area, and they wrote their own incident action plans. We actually got everyone to go through the act process to make sure that we had that unified approach to it, but we allowed them to be the masters of their own domain. MARTA, our transportation agency, the Georgia World Congress Authority, State Farm Marina, so on and so forth, they know their properties and they know the processes and procedures better than anyone else. Why should we be writing a plan for them? They wrote the plan, we incorporated into the bigger process. Everything in red, we actually did as a cohesive unit, as this multidisciplinary team, and that's the process that we built there. The thing that's really cool, I talked about the fact that we had critical and specialized resources. We went ahead and said no more. We're taking all of this, we're putting in a staging area, and you'll see there we had all hazards teams, we had ID teams, we had contingency operations, and you didn't get a resource unless it went up through Area Command and they made a decision based upon the current need as to what logistics resources can be allocated to one of the 13 different incident command posts. And it worked. No one felt like they didn't have what they needed, and we were able to quickly get back resources after they're with their mission to then be used on another mission. Huge success for us in that regard. And the left side, you can see some of the other things that were actually supporting the Unified Area Command, the Joint Information Center process, the Intelligence Operations Center, human trafficking, our aviation security, so on and so forth. These were massive units that were still operating, and we wanted to make sure that they were interconnected into this bigger Unified Area Command. So it was a successful process. We actually got our law enforcement partners to be the champions of this, and it was an easy thing for them to see after the training of how this is a huge successful thing. And we leveraged the expertise from 2018, took it to 2019, and had a great Super Bowl. Then we'll go ahead and fast forward into the next slide, and which is talking about the tale of the uncrowned champions. Everyone knows what happened between 2019 and 2020. COVID went ahead and came. Let's jump to the next slide. We were all prepared to go ahead and run the Final Four. I mean, everything down to the last minute. We did a year's worth of planning. We went ahead and fine-tuned our processes and procedures and everything else that we had in place, and we're ready to go. And then we got the call. They canceled it. And we had to then shift our attention, not totally, we were still watching that on the side with the pandemic, but we had to go ahead and take all the work that we did and table it, and not sure if we were going to get it back again, but we had to make sure that we're ready to then adapt to the new situation. And what you saw there is people went ahead and said, hey, Area Command made sense for us last time. Why can't we implement it again? And that's what we did. In our particular jurisdiction, we went ahead and created 15 incident command posts based upon the cities. They wanted to be the masters of their own domain. We made it possible. You then see some other things on there, what we have with our hospital partners. And we made sure that they were incident command posts as well. They wanted to be the masters of their own domain, and it worked well. We had MARTA, and then we had the things in red. Rings in red, once again, were plans that we were responsible for. Green were plans they were responsible for. We had specimen points of collection initially, and all this rolled up into a Unified Area Command. And this is where we leveraged our expertise of the Public Health Office. None of these jurisdictions had subject matter expertise. We were so lucky to have infectious disease doctors, multiple infectious disease doctors in our public health team. They became our safety officers. They became the individuals that every one of these incident command posts, all 22 of them, leveraged for what they could bring to the table. And what we did is then took all the people to the side, and we put all of our actual government agencies and all the other people that were more considered out of the operational role, more of the strategic role. And we were able to create a process where we did not operationally control individual cities, but we coordinated the planning, logistics, and financial efforts of this. And it allowed us to go ahead and be successful together. How did we achieve this? We engaged leadership early with senior officials. We got their buy-in. Will be the next slide. We created situation reports. We were not seeing anything that was hyper local. We created our own models. And it was something that I couldn't believe that we were able to do. We were given 2 weeks and we went ahead and pulled some really incredible minds, and it was people that were non-traditional. We're looking at folks that did data analysis, financial analysis, and we told them what we wanted to do. We even had an actuary on the team that was knocking some of these things out. And we were able to get hyper local with this. And really, once again, it was able to leverage capabilities that we had that we were not aware of all the time, except when we started doing these cross-pollination efforts. Next slide. So we were tasked with, like everyone else, vaccinating public safety and healthcare. And that mission went ahead and started off as something that's just, hey, let's get to 65. Let's look at public safety, let's go to 65. Everyone knows how that went ahead and continued to grow. We didn't have a good location to do this, but we had a partner in Mercedes-Benz. We had a partner over there that went ahead and had a closed pod plan. So we said, hey, would you mind us expanding that a little bit to take on some of these type of things? Absolutely. We got tons of space, nothing's happening over here. So they gave us one of the club rooms on the ground level. And this is one of those prime examples of you invite someone over, and next thing you know, you turn around and they're no longer in the guest room. They're in the living room. They're in the kitchen. They took over some other parts of your mud room, so on and so forth. And I was that guest. I was the person that just kept saying, oh, what's over there? Oh, what's over there? What can we move over there? This is kind of a long walk for people that are that old. Can we move it something a little closer? And we just kept growing our footprint inside the stadium. And we were able to meet the needs, but we got to the point like everyone else. We couldn't expand our operation because we had a limited number of clinical staff. We had our health director down there. She was vaccinating. We had a day a week where we called it Baby Doc Day. Emory would bring in their medical students. We would get our other medical providers would come into different schools to be able to help us vaccinate as well. But affectionately, the Emory folks were called Baby Doc Day. And that's one of the days that we knew we could plus up our numbers, but we still couldn't take it to where we wanted to go. So one of the things we wanted to be able to do is I presented a process to the state, and I was turned down. I wanted to be able to supersize the stadium and get up to 14,000 people a day that we could vaccinate. And I didn't get much buy-in. And what we were trying to do at the time is we talked to our hospital partners and we said, if we combine our efforts and we combine our resources, we can be successful together. You don't need to set up a pod for your hospital. We could actually do it over here, and we can all share this to be this common good for all the citizens that we serve. Everyone came to the table. The CEOs, COOs, chief medical officers, everyone came to this table because Arthur Blank held it at the stadium. And when he speaks, people listen. If you're familiar with Arthur Blank, one of the individuals that created Home Depot, a huge philanthropist and someone that was really invested in his community. Everything that we did at his stadium, we never were charged for. He ran it through his different types of organizations to pick up the charge. We were given all this stuff as something that he felt he needed to get back to the community. And wow, that just went ahead and touched me as a role I was in, to see that someone of his stature felt that strongly that he needed to give back to his community. So at that time, we called that Operation Speedboat. We wanted to go ahead and supercharge our process. We presented it. We went to FEMA, and at that time we said, hey, we'd love for you to go ahead and provide additional resources. We went to anyone that would listen, and no one would go ahead and bite. They just wouldn't. So we went ahead and said, what else can we do? We'll just try to make it work with what we got. And we partnered with Mercedes-Benz on a larger scale. And we started growing it to more than just the club room. We started taking over layers of the actual stadium to do this. And the reason why is I knew more than anyone that I wasn't going to be able to do this. I didn't have the expertise in knowing how to move large numbers of individuals and people. They did. They were always number one in customer satisfaction across the NFL. And I knew that based upon the fact that they could dump 70, 80,000 individuals out of the stadium successfully without anyone getting hurt or any other problems, that we needed a partner like that in the process. And that started our unified command there. Next slide. And that went ahead and talked about patience and persistence. We kept bringing the plan up. We kept talking to people. We kept trying to get someone to believe in it. And it went try, fail, try, fail, try, fail. And finally, we got out of that loop to a success moment. Our persistence paid off. We were able to get partnerships. We were able to become one of 10 type 1 community vaccination centers in the United States, and the only one in the Southeast. And it was a kicking and screaming moment, but we finally did it. And when they came to see how we were operating, the FEMA administrator went back to talk to his other regional administrators and said, it's a machine. And that was probably the biggest compliment that I could ever get from someone of his position, was that they recognized what we had was really a fine-tuned process. And we were fine-tuning it every day, trying to make it better. So we served in, I served as well as Unified Incident Commanders. My co-partner was the gentleman who was the Vice President of Safety and Security for Arthur Blank's Sports and Entertainment, the bigger company. We were able to get 700 staff from Department of Defense, Mercedes-Benz, and other organizations to be able to supercharge this. And we were actually got the largest amount of individuals vaccinated in one day, just shy of 13,000, so 12,726. And that was probably one of the most proud moments of my life, standing in the stadium, looking out and seeing everyone going through the different processes on different levels of the stadium, getting vaccinated, knowing that finally in my career, I was able to do something to impact the people that I walk with every day in my community. It was a touching moment for me. It's something that still I look back on and think very, very proudly of it, and the fact that we did it as a group. We actually were able to take people that Arthur was not leveraging and put them towards other processes that we had. The health department didn't have enough people to do record management. He went ahead next day, created a room. Everyone brought their laptop in, and all of his people that worked in the front office for Arthur and Mercedes-Benz Stadium started doing data entry for us. No job was too big, no job was too small. And this was probably one of my bucket list moments when this happened. And probably one of my most nervous moments as well, is I signed the contract to rent a stadium. I'd never done that before, and that was my first time renting a stadium, an NFL stadium, for multiple days. And once again, he never went ahead and charged us the going rate. He just charged us for what his costs were when it got to this point in time. So I will always be in debt to Mr. Blank and what he did for us and what he did for this community. If you go to the next slide, it's just a quick snapshot of the 3 levels that we had. We actually wanted to go ahead and do another 4 pods on the field. We didn't get the buy-in and the extra resources to do that, but we went ahead and created these divisions, and really leveraging the team of teams concept. We would have a team leader for each one of those. They knew what the mission was, and we allowed them to go ahead and move around their resources inside of it and everything else to adapt to whatever was coming their way. All we did from the unified command process and up inside the command centers, we controlled the flow. So the folks that are in the stadium were good at that. When people would come in, they would start saying, hey, vector more people to this pod, vector more people out of that pod. That's the only thing we did. We allowed these folks to then take it once some person came up to their location to make sure that they move them through efficiently. The picture on the bottom right was something that I still remember and smile as I look at this. And it was an efficiency process that was put in place. So the gentleman that was an executive, within Arthur Blank, was actually a retired individual from Mercedes-Benz that was a president of North America. And he watched a whole day's worth of tape, and he timed us. And he went ahead and determined that we're not being as efficient as we could. And he came up with the process that you see there. He called it priming the pump. And he went ahead and got chairs for us to do this too. So you'll see on the right-hand side of the table, we would get someone there, and the person that was doing the vaccination could work in that individual, while the individual in the yellow vest was working with the person on the other side of the table to get their information into the system, to get them ready. So when the vaccinator was done, they rolled their chair over to the next person and they vaccinated them. It was back and forth, back and forth. Someone else filled the syringes, someone else did all that. They just went ahead and brought it to them, and all that individual was able to do is to be as efficient as possible, moving from side to side. And that's one of those things that was so cool, being able to see people with different backgrounds that were able to be leveraged to help us be more successful. And that's one of those cool moments with this. So by the numbers, next slide, every one of us have success. This is just kind of a quick down and dirty, but over 560,000 vaccines are administered, and we were able to do a lot in our particular jurisdiction with this, and we're very grateful for all the support that we had to be able to make that possible. The next slide, just a quick SWOT about this. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, which got kind of messed up. I apologize about that, and threats. So our strength, command and control, we managed with critical specialized resources really well. The next thing, we had huge weakness. Our plans turn into response plans need to turn into a base plans, and we need to have more opportunities for PHLI. And that's one of the things I took away from this particular moment in time, is that we need to train more, we need to exercise more together. We didn't do enough, especially when it came to this. And that's something that I promised my public health partners we would do, and subsequently we did. Opportunities, engage early, engage often. We talked about leadership structures. You got to build those foundations, and don't wait to activate. This was a huge thing for us. We waited at the local level for the state and federal partners to say, go ahead and move forward. And I look back at that with my counterpart in public health emergency preparedness, as well as the health director. And one of the things that we're really candid about ourselves is that we should have went ahead and pushed the button and pulled the lever a lot sooner. And a life lesson that we'll always take with us as we move forward. And threats is just lack of real world situation to hone our skills and competing priorities. And that gets back to PHLI. We always have that threat of something else is more important. There's another problem. There's another elected official. There's another person saying, we got to go ahead and do something else, when we need to make sure that we spend time on the planning, organizing, equipping, training, and exercising. So important to our success. So with that being said, we have a quick little breakout here. And I want to be able to see how you guys will address a situation like this, based upon the different scenarios that different leadership styles that you just got. So I'll lean a little bit heavily on Stacy as well as the team to figure out how best to pull us out, but I'll read the scenario as we're figuring that out. So we have a sudden outbreak of Legionnaire's disease. Professor Murphy dreamt this one up. He felt like it was something that everyone loves so much. I think if you're in public health, if you haven't had at least one of Legionnaire's disease situations that happen right at the same time that you have a major special event, then you still have some more growth to do, because I think that happens to every one of us at some point in our career. So it was detected amongst attendees at a large outdoor festival. Reveals that decorative misters, fountains, things along those lines are aerosolizing the bacteria. Local hospitals increased in moment like illnesses and cases. Public health concern is spreading and is rapidly going through social media. So what I would love for you guys to do is to be able to just choose one of the leadership styles that you guys had from before, that we saw about before. And as a group, just think about how you're going to go ahead and describe how you would tackle these typical things. I provided to Stacy just a couple questions for the group to answer. And you guys can either go ahead and choose to be one of the 5 things there: epidemiology and surveillance, hospital, so on and so forth, public information, or pick whatever you want within one of those categories or combination thereof. Really what we want to be able to do is let you guys have a chance to look at the different leadership styles, talk amongst yourselves, and come back real quick and just walk us through that. So Stacy, do I turn it over to you to facilitate that, or Professor Murphy?
Yeah, Stacy, can we get some equal opportunity breakout groups, just random?
You got it.
Oh yeah.
And the handout is in the chat if anyone needs it.
Yeah,
Thank
you should
you.
be able to download and view that when you get into your breakout rooms.
I don't think more than 15 minutes is really necessary. It's a really quick conversation. So if we could maybe time it as such.
Yep.
Awesome. So I think Stacy will be pulling you guys up and putting you in different rooms, and I'll have a chance to have a quick sip of water.
All right, I've got the rooms made. We've got 5 rooms. So it'll be like 5, 6 people per room, if that's good. And open. Everyone has returned.
Awesome. All right, folks. I heard there were some great conversations. Really what we're looking at on the 3rd page of your packet, just 3 quick things to talk about. So each group, hopefully someone was elected as, or voluntold as a spokesperson. Just what leadership style you chose, why, and you know, how it kind of shaped what any actions, coordination, or messaging that you may have developed. And then a limitation or a risk that you identify based upon your leadership style. So with that being said, I'm going with number 5. Group 5.
I wasn't ready for that. I really thought
I
we were going to go in numerical order. Okay. Okay, so we were group 5, and we assumed that we needed to pick like the 5th
group description. I hope that was correct.
Totally fine.
Okay, so we were state or regional health coordination. And our chosen leadership style was the collaborative cross-boundary. That leadership style just seemed to yield itself the best to an organization that was providing oversight across jurisdictions and allocating resources, facilitating information between local partners, and then issuing advisories, messaging, guidance down to maybe smaller local organizations. So that's what we picked. It shaped our team's actions. Basically, what we discussed was the way we'd make decisions or just work as a large state or regional agency was kind of create kind of a bullpen style of managers and use the staff underneath us to be in charge of different zones or regions that were involved in the outbreak, and then create messaging for each of those, and then like let it trickle down to the local health departments or agencies that were the ones really getting the message out, and create kind of a joint joint information center.
Okay.
And then the different public information officers would get the messaging from us, and to make sure all the messaging was the same. And then the limitation we identified was just the potential of not having a lot of control over what happens at the local level or the messaging at the local level. Like we can say, this is what we're going to put out there, but we don't really have the ability to really boots on the ground control what is being said or done at the local level.
Very difficult. I think Group 5 did a great job there, and thank you for presenting. You touched on to some of the core aspects of the area command. Is operationally you're not controlling anything, but you're providing the planning, the coordination aspect of that when you're in your common message that was coming out to make sure that everyone was synchronized in that regard. So kudos to you guys for realizing how important that was and pushing it down so that all the different groups could amplify that one message. So great job, and good job acknowledging that that was a limitation, as well as that you have to take a leap of faith with that style, that your folks are going to do the right thing based upon guidance that you provide them. So good job. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, Group 4. Group 4, running up to the podium.
Group 4 was Lindy, Tanya, and Vivian.
Okay, thank you for that. I didn't catch what group I was in, so.
Yeah, it is not intuitive.
Yeah, I don't think any of us did. I didn't either.
Okay, we chose situational leadership style
Okay.
for this. And we chose how it shaped us is we would have leadership identified subject matter experts to make decisions. We communicate internally with the type of dashboard that would be accessible to different agencies.
Mm-hmm.
We would respond to how the spread happened and how to prevent it from happening again. And let healthcare facilities know how to expect an increase in need for care. We would communicate with the public through, social media pages, fact sheets, like know the signs and when to seek care, and also the news media. The limitation or risk that we identified was would be communication as dynamics change. And the strengths that we identified also, we looked at them, they could also be weaknesses or limitations, accountability.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Strength, the accountability of all the first, but yeah, we kind of thought it was like a double-edged sword there with the strengths.
Very cool. No, great job, Group 4. You're actually, so I shared with you earlier, I love situational as one of the ones that I go to often because I think it allows for flexibility as well as a collaborative one. But I think you guys hit all the right points there. And some of the things that you thought as a risk was definitely things that always weigh heavily on my mind as well. So kudos to you guys for seeing that, also that double-edged sword topic as well. So good job. Excellent. All right, group 3.
Hey, everybody. So we might have missed a key instruction in that we did not realize we were assigned an agency role. So I'm going to take a stab at both and say that initially our group was like, oh, collaboration across these agencies, beneficial in the sense of the outbreak, the accessibility, considering people might be traveling for, post, et cetera, and talked about the idea of a limitation is that given the situation, there's a quick call to action and there might be messaging or folks that might be missing from the table. But if I'm looking at, just to try to take a stab, and my teammates can chime in, if I'm thinking about environmental health as an agency in number 3, and how, we're kind of talking about inspecting the sources and things like that, I would lean into saying that this might be a little bit more autocratic and directive because, just kind of having to like take action and focus on, are the misters the sources, things like that. And not to say that they wouldn't be, collaborating and communicating. I haven't quite processed the other questions on that one, since I'm just spitballing it now, but yeah.
First of all, I commend you guys for not everyone shies away from that. And I think I commend you guys for looking at that. I think initially, to your point, you have to have an autocratic approach because you have to say, look, I need the inspectors to go out. I need you to go ahead and check these 3 fountains. From there, your leadership style can change. But initially, you're digesting information and you're saying team A, B, and C is going to be these people. You're going to go out and do these type of samplings and bring them back. And this is our timeline to achieve it. So kudos for you guys seeing that as an excellent leadership style for that particular moment in time with that. So good job. Great. Group 3. I just did group 3. Group 2, sorry.
Yeah. Let's see. So for group 2, we chose the leadership style of collaborative, also cross boundary, just because it seemed like this is the best. There's a lot of subject matter experts, and this is like the best way to utilize the resources and things, since we already have stuff to kind of respond to. Letting people, kind of just do what they do best seemed like the best kind of approach to take for it. How it shaped our actions and coordination, and messaging. Let me see. Some of the things that we kind of talked about were just like the meetings with the experts for game planning and executing, and talking about like info sharing, and having like collaborative decisions about like who is responsible for which kind of part. So like as far as liaisons for communication, whether it be like one of the lead agencies who can kind of show up in a different capacity, or the health department, like whatever we kind of decide on, but giving it the opportunity to be a collaborative decision based on like however we're using the resources in other places. And let me see what else. Usually outlines the plan, can create that, of which this involves all stakeholders. I think that was the point of this sentence that I'm reading. And let me see what else here.
Any risk or limitation?
Yeah, the main risk that we kind of talked about is just a delayed consensus, one, because of there being so many folks, and trying to get people in the same space in the same time. And then there's also a lot of head honchos with this type of flow, and just kind of like the delays and things that can cause. There's a lot of people that like work that they know what they are talking about in their field, and that is why it is helpful. It can kind of be it can cause delays and things But it is kind of worth the interdisciplinary approach to the issue, but there can definitely be a risk in just kind of like delaying getting to decisions and stuff.
I am giddy. I'm kind of shaking in my chair here. You hit the risk that I'm always concerned of with that model in that particular scenario. And I'm kudos to your group for seeing that. You have to, if you implement this leadership strategy, folks, be so careful to not let paralysis set in and to not group think to the point that nothing gets solved. And sometimes we see that in public health. We see that in other areas as well, but it happens a lot in public health. We want to be collaborative. We want to get everyone's thoughts. We want to get everyone's buy-in, but we run into the situation that we're not taking that next step. And good job for your group to see that while it's a really strong pro, it can be a huge con. And as a facilitator of that group, it's important to go ahead and keep people moving in that way to go ahead and get to that final decision. So excited. You made me happy. Thank you, group 2. All right, group 1, bring us home.
So for group 1, we took a different approach. After reading the case scenario, we kind of looked at our roles and decided, based on our current positions and experience, of our leadership style. So we did a primary leadership style, which was situational, and then we did a secondary leadership style, which was collaborative and crossbody. We actually took a vote and decided which ones to kind of come up with leadership styles. And so how it shaped our team's actions, coordination, and messaging. One of the things, I think John pointed this out, and he said, you know, we wanted to make sure that we rely on established partners and existing resources, what resources need to be brought in for rural areas. Another one of our team members talked about bidirectional interaction with hospitals and providers, since there are cases coming in based off of the scenario. And also setting up a standard incident command. As far as messaging, one of our team members worked with tribes, and she emphasized how all the teams and partner involved, state, tribal, federal, there needs to be consistency in communication briefings and make sure that information is fact-based, being provided to, you know, outlets such as social media, through trusted community leaders, and making sure the information is culturally appropriate materials for different demographics. One of our limitations or risks that we identified, another team member identified and stated, or John said this, that public health is flexible and adaptable. That's a pro. One of the weaknesses is emotional intelligence, inconsistency in teams, since you're dealing with different people and different behavior and different experiences. And the last is the risk is, do you have the right people to do the task that's needed? So that kind of summarizes our limitation or our risk that we identified.
No, great job, folks. To go ahead and touch on the last part, we always try to be able to control our stable. We always make sure we want to pick the best racing horses we possibly can get. But sometimes you get just in time, folks, and you have to be able to quickly identify what you have with that and work with the group you have. So congratulations for you guys to see that you are going to change your leadership style based upon where you were in that particular response process. I also want to make a call out. So excited to hear the bidirectional information flow. Far too often we just consume information and we don't push something back, and people on the other end is like, I just keep putting something into the box. I don't get everything back from the box. So kudos for your team for realizing how important it is to let these folks see what their information is actually going to. And I know we do that in public health, but I don't think we do it enough for the people that we serve. And I appreciate you guys really calling that out. So great job, group 1. Awesome. All right. So we're on the home stretch, folks. I mean, like, we're really seeing the finish line, light at the end of the tunnel. Stacy, could you throw up the slide again? Great job, all groups, by the way. Great job. Each one of you guys made me kind of do a little scoot in my chair. I'm seeing me happy there. So this will be inside your guys' packet. The next slide that you see is just that quick overall side-by-side summary that you'll have to be able to reference and going forward. I'm not going to go through that because you guys have done a masterful job of walking through that, seeing some pros and cons, but just something for you all to think about as you continue to grow as leaders. So this last thing I want to talk about, we're not going to go ahead and break out or ask you guys to do this, but I want you guys to think about this individually. So what is going to be your go-to leadership style? Where are you going to start in your process, and how are you going to go ahead and change from there? You know, there were some times where when Murphy and I were actually doing things, we were in the servant leadership style. We were trying to build that trust, that partnership, and we were giving a lot to the people that we were serving to be able to get their buying and trust. And then we would change our leadership style as time went along. I challenge you guys to go ahead and think, hey, I'm going to come out with this. I'm going to change to this based upon different things. You know, one style that you want to practice more. There's some there that I will be honest that I could do better with. And I want you guys to go ahead and just call it out yourself. Hey, I'd like to try this, and it may not be comfortable for me, but I'm going to try find an opportunity to go ahead and do that. And then this is the hard one. This is the one that I always hate when someone does this to me. Give yourself one concrete action that you're going to do the next 30 days. In the next 30 days, I want to do X, Y, and Z. And what's so important is, I'm going to jump down to the last bullet point. Share that for someone that's going to keep you accountable. Find someone that's in your trusted network and go ahead and say, hey, look, I really want to work on this leadership style. I want to do it. And I really want you to go ahead and hold me to it and make sure that I achieve that. That's what's so important, is making sure someone that helps you, is your cheerleader, is your coach, is your mentor, someone that actually helps you to go ahead and do that. So think about also what you learned today about different leadership styles and applying those new approaches to strengthen your team or agency. Those are other things that you want to reflect on as well. And then with that being said, the last thing I want to go ahead and share with you guys, next slide, is just these core competencies: communication, align your teams around your shared goals. Ethics, we talked about that. Morally, ethically, legal, have to throw that in there, legal or illegal. But build that credibility with the people you serve. Build the credibility with your team. Build the credibility with your internal and external stakeholders. Because if you do that on the blue sky days, when you have the gray sky days, people will come to you and gravitate towards you as a leader and see how can they help you. And they're also looking at you to go ahead and help them through their darkest hour. Get that trust, build it. Adaptability, semper gumby, folks. I can't tell you, it gets back to the whole bamboo piece. An oak tree, when it's facing strong winds, will rip out of the ground, roots and all, and fall to its side. A bamboo tree will take the gust of wind, will take the hurricane force winds, bend and come back. Channel your inner bamboo. I had that on one of the slides. My team used to always hear it. Actually, one of my team members bought me a little bamboo plant for my desk after they heard it so many times. But really think about it. You want to tell your folks, don't be the oak, be the bamboo. Be flexible, be adaptable. Go ahead and work with those situations. System thinking, understand those interconnections, play three-dimensional chess. Far too often, we work with folks that are just playing checkers, and we have to, as leaders, be chess players. We have to be thinking not only about what step we just did and the actions that occur thereafter, but you have to go ahead and think about it, play things out. Don't just go ahead and be so reactionary. Not to the point that you're going to stop and have paralysis, but think ahead. Think about how your actions are and what their ramifications will be. And the last one, I think one of the groups talked about it, is emotional intelligence. Build that, lead through empathy, lead through awareness. It shows that you care. Your team will rally around you. You will be an incredible leader if you can go ahead and continue to put nuggets in that emotional intelligence bucket. You will actually go ahead and become someone that your team will go ahead to the hills for. And that's something that's so important, because that's where you have these successes during these responses. So with that being said, the last slide is just a thank you. I appreciate the opportunity today for being able to come speak with you, share some of my experiences in leadership. I'll also tell you that my voyage is still going, and there's a lot more for me to grow. I know that Professor Murphy got a lot of my ribs today, but I can't thank him enough for challenging me through my career as well. Everything that I've done, I always pick up the phone and call him or text him and say, hey, does this make sense? I'm frustrated with this. This is what I'm doing. And he's a sounding board. And I'm extremely grateful for that on a personal and a professional level. I challenge you guys to go ahead and find someone like that as well in your life, that you can actually go ahead and have those frank conversations. He's not the type of person that's going to tell me I'm doing great all the time. He will tell me when something's not right. And that's the best type of person to have as your coach, is someone that's willing to go ahead and tell you the good and bad. And that's something that I'm very grateful to have in Professor Murphy. So with that being said, thank you guys. Great afternoon. I appreciate you letting me have the opportunity, and I will turn it back over to Dr. Murphy to go ahead and close us out. Thank you.
Tough one. I know it's a tough one to say. No, thanks, Matt. This was amazing. I think the chat box is full of compliments and appreciation for what was shared today. I'm always grateful to have, experts that have been through the ringer as it relates to, public interface and public servant and that leadership spectrum that many and all of you are currently or have previously done and will continue to do. It's so important to get that kind of dip your toe in the deep end without having to be forced to jump into the deep end, hear these experiences and learn from them. I did see one thing in the chat that I haven't gotten a chance to go back to. I started to type an answer or a response to earlier. And Matt, maybe you can take a minute. I don't know where it went. So many chats came up, but there was a chat that came in that was asking what leadership style might be the most effective when establishing a public health practice for the first time in an organization with multiple internal partners. I can't really tell who wrote it. It's a shorter, truncated name, I believe. But if you don't mind, if you're still online, maybe explain a little bit more about what you're meaning with that question, and maybe Matt and some of the team here can help propose solutions. I don't want to say answer it, but propose solutions. Do we have? I'm looking around the Brady bunch here to see if I recognize. No.
Well, while we're looking for the individual, gosh, that is a stumper. Not knowing the true dynamics of that individual is facing. I mean, I would probably say the quiver, the arrows that I pull out of the quiver is more the democratic and collaborative cross boundary. That's just my gut feeling right there. I think it shows that you are coming in hat in hand and wanting to work with folks, and that their positions, their thoughts are important, and you want to hear them and you want to actually work with them in that regard. I far too often you will come to a team where people have been working, and I've been here for 25 years. I've been here for 30 years. I've been here for 15 years. And, this next phrase, we've always done it this way. Appreciate that. Love to go ahead and hear why. Don't ever use that phrase ever, folks. But, I'd love to hear why you're doing it that way. And then let's see, maybe if we have a fresh perspective, and then reshuffle the deck and be able to have an opportunity, because you may find that person in the corner that has another idea, but has never been able to share it because the previous leader never provided that opportunity, or that individual has been there for 25, 30 years, drown out the room with their comments or their thoughts. And I've had that happen in some places where I was as well. It's like, look, we all have another perspective, we all have another way of looking at this. And that's why I love the emergency management process, because you're bringing the best and brightest together with different perspectives to try to go ahead and solve a solution. And that just always makes me so happy to go ahead, and I feel like someone walking down the hill with my team, and you're always like, hey, I got a person that specializes this, and this, and I know that I have a weakness, but man, I got 3 people on the team that have a huge strength there, and we're going to do it together. So long answer is that democratic and collaborative is where I would probably start with.
Great. Any other comments or any other perspectives? Anybody want to share anything? I know we're coming up on our confirmed time, but now's the time. If you have any questions or comments or share an experience or something like that, please do. This is what these sessions are for. We get folks like Matt to come and join us and share their knowledge and their experiences, and let's take advantage of it.
So we were talking when you guys are in a group. Kathy did not know that she also shared a similar background as well in the city, and that's really cool. And Tom, heard about you today too. I'm actually excited because it's great to see how we started something and it has just grown into something so much bigger and better. And I think that's so important, folks. Don't lose sight, and don't miss the opportunity to go ahead and talk to your peers in this group and see how they're doing things. Because the epiphany moments, I haven't had a chance to be at a conference in quite some time, and I really would love to figure out a way to get back to it. But I used to love sitting in the session and hearing someone talk, and not the big sessions, the smaller ones. And those are the ones where you had that person that had that aha moment where they are, and they're so proud to share it. And you're just sitting there like, that makes so much sense. Why didn't I think of that? And gosh, I could take that back and go ahead and share it and then supersize it for what we're doing. And that's why I think it's so important. This program that you guys have here is a perfect opportunity for you guys to do that. Don't miss out on that.
Great points. I agree 100%.
I'll just add real quick. I just wanted to say thank you. I mean, so I've got a 20+ year public health background, but was working in healthcare for 20+ years and did, Joint Commission and emergency preparedness, all that fun stuff, environment of care stuff, right? And then when I shifted over to public health, it was December of 2019, and we all know what happened shortly after that, right? And so, there were no rules, right? And so now, I'm the regional health promotion program manager here in the state of New Mexico, which is a centralized public health system, which is its own animal. We're one of 8 states left that's a centralized public health system. And so, when I'm thinking of things like, as you were talking, like the work that we're trying to do in New Mexico, my teams around harm reduction strategies and implementing, medication for opioid use disorder, right? That's a crisis, right? I mean, mental health, right? So, when you're talking about being a servant leader and looking at that collaborative approach, it was really refreshing actually to hear you, because really that's what I'm trying to do. Is we can't do it alone and in isolation. We have to understand that there's multiple funders for a lot of this work. And so how to collaborate without people feeling like you're stepping on their turf, and that we just want the data to understand if our strategies are actually getting us closer to the end goal, right? And I think we lose that a lot in our work. Like, we don't have these conversations. And so I'm kind of the outlier right now, because I'm like trying to really be like systems approached and stuff. So it was really refreshing that I'm like, okay, John, I can keep up the fight because like I'm actually doing the right thing. So thank you for that.
John, spot on. Thank you for sharing that. I think, folks, what you just saw is John went from that compliance to mission-driven process in his life as Joint Commission, all compliance. Now he's working on a mission. And thank you for sharing that, John. You're right, John. It takes a while to go ahead and see the fruits of your labor, but what you're doing is going to get you there. You're developing that foundation, that relationship. And thank you for saying that. It's so important. So many people get funding. So many people do different little pieces of the big puzzle. And sometimes it takes someone like yourself to go ahead and step up and say, we don't have a coordinator, but man, I would love for all of us to get together and share what we're doing to go ahead and move the needle a little bit further. So kudos to you for doing that. That's the hardest step, is taking that and being like, well, there's no one here. I'm going to go ahead and lead. Thank you for sharing, John. Love that backdrop too. Is that from your office? You turn around your window and you see
That
that?
is actually a drone photo of New Mexico State University. I also teach there, but I'm an alum from, and those are the Organ Mountains, Desert Peaks National Monument. If you've never been to Las Cruces, great hiking. Don't hike the Organ Mountains alone, but the Needle is awesome to do in a group. So anyway, plug for tourism.
Way cool. I love that. If you open Murphy's blinds, you'll see an air conditioning unit outside his office. So you have a better view from yours.
Love it.
That's why they stay closed.
Thank you, John.
This has been great, everybody. Any more comments, questions? And if not, like Matt said, and like we always echo, use the group. We're in a cohort together, even the center here. I know where Matt lives. I can make sure you can reach out to him if you had any other follow-up questions or comments. Let's make sure that we feel like we're a part of the group, and we can help each other solve any problems or provide some sort of solutions or considerations. That's part of the growth curve too. We're a network, and we hope we always remain that same network as, you know, the cohort that went through it and had this experience together. In closing, we always say, please take the time for the survey. Chuck, I think you've got that live and ready to roll, just to give us your feedback so we can always improve our delivery to you and make sure that we're hitting the mark. You know,
Thanks, Stephen. The link is in the chat.
Oh, great. I missed it. Sorry. There we go. It would help to scroll down the chat box, wouldn't it?
I just pulled it back down to the bottom, so it's
Thanks,
easily
Kathy.
accessible.
There we go. All right. And with that said, we'll go ahead and close it off and see you guys in 2 weeks at the next one.
Thank you,
all.
folks. Appreciate your time
Matt.
today.
Thank y'all.
Stay strong. Keep going.
Thank you.